Boxing Source here checking in, and I have a great guest with me. Who's able to join me here to talk boxing. Has been in the boxing business for a good amount of time. It's part of as they say, a boxing family. Part of brotherhood, basically. Here with Lane Boxing, along with his brother Terry Lane. But I am blessed to have brother Tommy Lane here with us. How's it going, Tommy?
Hey James, I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Seems like it's been a fairly busy couple of years or so for the Lane brothers. I know that you're associated with certain heavyweight that I've had as a guest on the Boxing Source a couple of weeks back, and that is a Big Bang Zhilei Zhang.
Yeah.
And when I talked with him, that was like last month. He was, going into 2024, looking for, a good opponent after coming off of his two wins over Joe Joyce. And, just not long after that, he was set up to have a fight with former WBO heavyweight champion Joseph Parker, which is coming up here. So, your thoughts on that fight getting set up, and what y'all are looking for with Zhilei Zhang here in 2024.
Yeah, man, that's that. I think it's a great fight. Zhilei versus Joe Parker, coming off of a big 2023 for Zhilei, two wins against Joe Joyce, one in April, one in September, really put him in the top five of the heavyweight division, especially after the rematch and the how kind of perfect of a knockout that was, and just dominating of a performance in both fights. So we wanted to keep the momentum going, and we had an idea that we were going to be fighting in Saudi on either the Tyson Fury Usyk undercard in February or the show in March 8th, on March 8th, that we're on now. And we really didn't know who the opponent was going to be because so many guys were committed to December 23rd when they had that huge show with all of those great fights, great heavyweights fighting each other. So we were watching that pretty eagerly, and we after that fight, we kind of looked at who the winners were, and I texted George Warren pretty right away and just said, "Hey, listen, Zhilei would be interested in fighting basically all of these guys: Joshua, Parker, Dubois, Ajit Kabayel, and the Anthony Joshua is, I think, Zhilei's dream fight before his career ends. So there's a little hope there. Eddie Hearn did an interview and listed Zhilei as like one of three names that was a possibility. So there's a little exploring of that option, but when it became clear that he was going in a different direction and likely fighting Ngannou, and His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh, who is doing amazing things for the sport, putting on these events in Saudi Arabia and really having the resources to break down these network alliances and these promotional rivalries. I mean, he is making fights happen that I don't think get made, in your standard method of the boxing business, but they're happening. And he said that he wanted to see Zhang Zhilei versus Joe Parker, and Parker was a guy that we were interested in fighting, kind of going back a little while, but especially after December 23rd. And initially, it seemed that Parker might have been unavailable, or he was weighing his options. So we didn't know if that was likely. We started talking about Deontay Wilder, who of course didn't win, but still big name, would be a big fight for Zhilei. And it came back around that, from what we were told, is His Excellency wanted to see the Parker fight, and it was not a difficult fight to get done. Zhang Zhilei will fight anybody, and so we're juiced about it. I think it's a great fight. Parker is ranked, I think, 3 or 4 in all of the 4 sanctioning bodies. Like, he's in the top 5 of all 4, which is kind of rare. So he's a top five guy as well. I think we have number four versus number five. At least that's what they're ranked in the Ring magazine, fighting each other. And like any other sport, when you have the number four and the number five guy in the world going up against each other, it's going to be a competitive fight. And um, we feel good about it. But, Parker is somebody that needs to be taken very, very seriously.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. As you mentioned there with Joseph Parker, he is like ranked at the very least number four in all four of the boxing sanctioning bodies. Like it's no lower than four. It's like from number two in the WBC or like maybe the WBA to like number four in the IBF. So,
Yeah.
like you said, Joseph Parker is, definitely there in the top five overall in the heavyweight rankings. So with Zhilei Zhang, facing Joseph Parker, that, kind of like keeps it, like you said, like as a top five heavyweight matchup. And so that's definitely a great matchup there for Zhilei Zhang. And, he, after, those fights, we was very confident that he could beat, any of those heavyweights that were part of that card on December 23rd. So setting up that fight with Joseph Parker is a very big fight for Zhilei Zhang. And as you said there, kind of like sets up 2024 to be a very big year for Zhilei Zhang. As you mentioned, Anthony Joshua, could have been a possibility out there and still is a possibility in 2024 because, that has been one of those fights that has been a big fight that has been mentioned over the past couple of years. So, we definitely would want to see if that fight could take place. So, what about that possibility? Like you said, coming off of this card, that's going to be in March because you're going to have, Joshua versus Ngannou, and you're going to have Zhang versus Parker, and you have Zhang win, you have Joshua win, then that could definitely be set up.
Absolutely. It's impossible to predict what's going to happen next. And because from my understanding and basically my knowledge is the extent of my knowledge a lot of the time is just what's the rumors that are out there on the internet. But the rumors are, which I think are more than rumors, that there's a rematch clause between Fury and Usyk. At the press conference announcing Joshua and Nagano, Turkey Al-Sheikh said that maybe he kind of hinted at maybe the winner of Nagano and Joshua would fight the winner of Usyk and Fury for real undisputed. So I think is a possibility. Ultimately, what I think is going to happen is we're going to see how everyone performs. If the Fury Usyk fight is like a great fight and deserving of a rematch, I think they'll do it again. I don't know if it's not the most competitive or if not it's not the most exciting. I'm not sure what the contract looks like, but kind of like what I said earlier, His Excellency has resources to get things done. So I think it's going to be based on how the performances are in the Parker Zhilei fight, in the Fury Usyk fight, and then the Ngannou and Joshua fight. And based on that, then I think we'll see some matchups between those three. But yeah, I mean, the Zhilei makes our job easy when it comes to who to fight because he will fight anybody. So Tyson Fury would be a big fight. Joshua, because they have a history where they fought in the Olympics. It's a huge fight. I think Joshua is coming off of a good solid year himself. And I think his team is interested in the fight. They were more excited about doing a fight in China, which is still a possibility. It's still on our team's bucket list of things we want to do with Zhang Zhilei's career before he retires. One is putting on a big show in China, World Heavyweight Championship fight in China. I think that's historic. There's not a better man to do it with. So, Joshua's team, I think, sees the appeal there. So it's hard. It's hard to see. And then, but with what His Excellency is doing in Saudi, I think a lot of the big fights are going to take place there for the foreseeable future. So it's really impossible to know what's good, what the whole like short term next year or two looks like. But really, I mean, the only focus right now is March 8th and Joe Parker.
Yeah, gotcha. You know, you did mention a thing there with Turkey Al Sheikh. Him bringing these, big fights there over in Saudi. That you kind of have that, that opening to make those big fights in the heavyweight division. But also, as you mentioned, like having a fight in China for Zhilei Zhang is, one of those big things that you want to have, there for Zhang to have. And hey, like you said, Anthony Joshua, in China, that was like, that would be a huge event in China. And as you said, it could be unpredictable there in the heavyweight division. We got to see what happens in February 17th there with Fury versus Usyk for undisputed. And after that, they have the rematch, how the world title situations would be, because as you have Zhilei Zhang as the WBO interim champion, he's there as a mandatory. Like he needs that that title shot with the WBO champion, whoever that may be. Now, if those two guys, Fury and Usyk, are locked in a rematch, maybe the WBO says, "Hey, y'all can have y'all rematch, but we got to have our belt." So
Right,
and,
right.
and still like the attractiveness of having Zhang versus Joshua. I mean, a lot of people would be very interested in that, especially if they're able to make it in China. So you still
Yeah.
have that opening of potentially having that particular fight being for the WBO heavyweight championship.
100%. Absolutely. Yeah. It's what the sanctioning bodies are going to do is a little bit of an unknown. I think in a lot of ways we're kind of entering uncharted territory with the unifications of titles, and I know they have the rotation method, and then you got the IBF who really does stick to their guns when it comes to their rules, and they're saying that they're going to order the champion of the IBF to fight the mandatory by March 15th, or agree to fight the mandatory by March 15th, and that's Hergovich. So I think everything is just up in the air, and where it all falls, I do not know, but I think seeing how people perform will be a good indication on where they fall.
Yeah, and we have to, figure out, as you said, how that rotation goes there in the heavyweight division. And you did mention a thing there with the IBF. They're very strict when it comes to their mandatories. I mean, we've, kind of like seen that last year with, a couple of divisions there, notably with the welterweight division. So if they, like call their mandatory, then you might have the IBF up there, for grabs as well in the
Yeah.
heavyweight division. But as you said, it will be something there to kind of like see how that shapes out here over the next couple of months there. So back with to Zhilei Zhang here. You don't want to flash back because um I want to like go over like how y'all were able to get in contact with Zhilei Zhang and become his main guy, his manager, promoter, and things like that. So kind of flashback to when you're able to contact Zhilei Zhang and his or his
Mhm.
group there in China and be able to be involved with his career.
Yeah, so we had been working in the business promoting shows mainly in Reno, Nevada since 2007. And we had some contacts in China, and we're always kind of looking to um, be involved in new projects and just keep busy. So we had contacts in China, and at the same time, there was another project going on where the Chinese national team was going to allow their professional fighters to turn pro, and there were three of them that were good enough that they received the blessing from the Chinese national team after the 2012 Olympics to turn pro. One was Zhu Shiming, the other was Meng Fan Long, and Zhang Zhilei. So I first met Zhilei in China. It was, I believe, 2014. and met him at his home province and just spent some time with him. Great guy. He was eager to not only go pro, but I think do it the right way and come to the US and kind of, put himself with a good US trainer in the US gym scene. Is There's nothing like it in the world. We still have the best coaches and gyms and sparring, and in terms of iron sharpening iron and getting better, the US is still the best place to do that. So, he came here, and we were involved with the beginning of his career. And fast forward, we were more involved on the promotional end, and was the new project, and there were some shaky parts at the very beginning, and kind of long story short, we actually stepped aside for a little while um, during kind of the beginning part of his career when he was getting experience. And then we came back in as managers. He really didn't have anybody looking out for his interests. So we came back into the picture a couple years later, and that's where we're at now.
Gotcha. I mean, as you mentioned there, sometimes when it comes to, getting fighters into the best positions there for your careers, as you mentioned, it could be like kind of difficult. Now, this doesn't have to be specific, to
Mm.
Zhilei Zhang, but could you kind of share like one of the difficulties it is to, try to put your fighter in the best position for, those good fights?
Well, there's a lot of a lot of hurdles, and it's a gigantic. It's a very long and very it's a long roller coaster ride. Is kind of the best way to put it, because you got your ups and your downs, um, and it takes resources. It takes the fighter needs to be on promoters' radars. It's really there's only a couple, in my opinion, actual promoters, and those are the guys who have the TV deals. So you need to be in business with those guys, and they are only looking to work with a certain level of talent, or somebody who's um, progressed enough where they don't have to put all the money into building them up to that level. So there's not kind of a right way to do things or a wrong way to do things, but it's all about just kind of playing the hand you're dealt, and one step at a time. But Zhilei, if I say this all the time, he's easy to work with because he's a focused professional who's always in the gym, and he's taking care of his end of the deal. He's training, he's staying out of trouble, he's doing everything that he needs to do to win. And that's that. I mean, when you have fighters who are not professional and blow up in weight in between fights, or get arrested and all of this stuff outside of the ring, that boxing is already insanely difficult to navigate, and when that stuff's being done, it's almost impossible to navigate. So we have a really good partner with Zhang Zhilei in that sense. But yeah, man, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of holding your breath. It's a lot of taking your chances when you see an opportunity. What do they say? Luck. The true definition of luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So that's kind of our philosophy, and but yeah, there are some ups and downs.
Oh yeah, definitely there. In the business of boxing, you definitely have those, as you say, roller coasters there. And like you said, when you try to put your fighter in the best positions possible, it's like, will they be interested in putting your fighter, in a fight card, particularly like you mentioned there with putting them in TV spots, and if they're
Mhm.
good enough to be put in as a fighter in the TV spot, because sometimes it's either they have a great performance, or on the flip side to that, there'll be a good opponent, or they're like an opponent that is like a showcase opponent for a showcase fighter. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So,
Yeah.
if you have somebody like that, then it's good. But if you have a fighter that's, is a quote unquote, as they say, difficult fighter, whether it's they're very good, but it's not, showcase worthy, or they're very difficult, to work with as far as like, with any type of fighter, then you won't be able to have the opportunity to have your fighter be in those positions. So with Zhilei Zhang, he, definitely has a good style, and, has power behind his punch. So you definitely have that opportunity to say, hey, you get a very good fight out of this guy. And, especially over the past few years, you've seen a lot of good fights there with Zhilei Zhang. So I guess
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about that particular dilemma as far as like trying to fit him in with some of these cards. Is we've seen him involved in a lot of good fights here over the past few years. I mean, you got
Yeah.
this thing here coming up with Joseph Parker. You had the 2 fights with Joe Joyce. You had the whole thing with Philip Hergovich too.
Yeah.
The year before that. So we've seen a number of good fights there with Zhilei Zhang. So you don't necessarily have to worry about that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And Gillet, truthfully, has always been in, a kind of a different league when it comes to promoters being interested. Promoters were always interested in Gillet. First of all, he's a heavyweight. He's an Olympian. He's from China, which is appealing. There's not many, if any, other Chinese heavyweights who are competing at this level and can compete at the world level. So all along, Gillet did have people who would be interested in him. I would say just this kind of a blanket statement overall. A lot of times for fighters, a lot of times they can have their careers held back by the people that they that they have obligations to contractually. And just Gillet, I would just say his career got off to a little bit of a bumpy start because he wasn't with one of those major promoters. He was with, Rock Nation at the time, who everyone was very excited about when they started boxing, but it kind of became clear that they weren't really going to expand their boxing department and put on their own shows and use their um their brand to get a TV deal or anything like that. So that it did take a couple years for Gillet to be able to break away from people who were holding him back, which really allowed him to be seen and fight on TV. And the first deal after that was with Matchroom, and they had the DAZN contract. So that was the first time that people, I think a lot of people heard about Gillet and heard about the Chinese heavyweight who can punch. But when they started to be, see him fight, that's when I think people kind of saw that, oh, this guy's the real deal.
Yeah, most definitely, most definitely. You had those, like I said, those fights that I mentioned, and when he's able to, when he was able to build up, his KO streak before having those fights with Joe Joyce, then that's when more and more people heard of him. And then as I mentioned there with the fight with Philip Hergovich, that like really had a lot of boxing fans interested. And then you had the first Joe Joyce fight, where people saw him stop Joe Joyce, with the first one, that like said, "Oh my goodness, you see this?" And then after then you have the rematch, and then the rematch set up like that great KO, which I pretty much said was a knockout of the year. So that definitely puts Zhilei Zhang as one of the more popular heavyweights out there right now. Now, just going back on a history standpoint, there with you, like you said, you started the company. You pretty much started with a promotional company there with your brother. Like kind of like go to those beginnings, and how's that coming off with your family and your father there, of course, the great Mills Lane.
Okay, so kind of going way back before. So my dad had a bad stroke in 2002, And before that, just a couple years before that, he partnered with Tony Holden, who is a longtime boxing promoter from Oklahoma, and they started Let's Get It On Promotions, the original Let's Get It On Promotions. And they promoted some big fights. They actually promoted Prince Nassim Hamed versus Marco Antonio Barrera. So that was, and I was, 13, 14 years old at the time. That's when I became kind of familiar with the boxing side, that boxing was a business. I grew up around it, would go to fights with my dad that he was refereeing. I loved going, I loved being around it. But, when you're a kid, you just don't look at things as a business or that. But that's when I realized, oh, that you can be involved in professional boxing and not be a fighter or a referee. There's a business to it. So ever since then, I always wanted to be involved in the business. And fast forward, he has a stroke and is retired from public life. In 2007, my brother and I get our boxing promoter's license in Nevada, and we promote our first show. And we're very young at the time, but we learned the basics of putting on a show, how it works, the ins and outs. You're always learning new stuff every day in boxing because there is no regulations, and everything is just kind of all over the place. But learn what it's like to move a fighter in the sanctioning bodies and how you do that. So we were promoting shows in Reno. We worked with a couple local fighters who were just coming off of the show, The Contender, the first season of The Contender, who lived in the area. So we had a nice little scene that we were working with, and moved one of those fighters, Jesse Brinkley, through the rankings. He was coming off a handful of losses, and we got him kind of the right fights in his hometown, and got him ranked and got him an IBF title fight with Lucian Bute in 2010. So those were kind of the beginning years of us being firsthand experience of being involved in the business. And then, we still do promote shows in Reno. We work a lot with Top Rank. We're the local promoters. When any show is in Northern Nevada, we're at least the local promoters, where we help get the deals done with the casinos and things like that. We have a really good working relationship with Top Rank in that regard. But yeah, and then, you're always looking for fighters, projects. There's always ideas that are floating around the boxing world that, you pay attention to. And we saw the Chinese boxing project and got excited about that, and fast forward, and here we are.
Yeah, as you mentioned, you looked into that their program there in China, and had the thing there with Zhilei Zhang. I think what was it, Fen Long Ming also was one of the guys that you were working with as well. So
Yeah.
that kind of like said, hey, here's this market that maybe hasn't been tapped that much. So let's see,
Yeah.
we could like go into this and then see where it comes out of it. And now here we are, like you said, fast forward, you got Zhilei Zhang as one of the top 5 heavyweights in the game right now, and is having a big fight coming up here against, as I said, former WBO heavyweight champion Joseph Parker. So that is definitely a big position there for your fighter, and we're definitely looking forward to seeing what will go on there with Zhilei Zhang in that fight on March 8th. And then after that, 2024 could be really huge there for Zhilei Zhang. But
Absolutely.
that being said, I would like for more people to kind of like follow you. So what do you have there for your social media accounts there that people could follow you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So Instagram and Twitter, I'm Tommy Lane 4, just all one, no underscores or anything like that. And not the most active, but I like to get on there, and I get most of my news from Twitter, or X nowadays. But yeah, no, I appreciate that. Tommy Lane 4, the number 4.
Yep. So y'all will be able to follow Tommy Lane there at Tommy Lane 4. Just look it up on Twitter, X, or whatever they call it these days, and also it'll be there on Instagram. Big thanks for you taking the time here to speak with the Boxing Source, and we're definitely going to get more here as the days pass by, leading into Zhilei Zhang versus Joseph Parker. So I thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us.
I appreciate you having me on, James, and thank you. And yeah, just got a big fight March 8th, but we're excited about it. And listen, I just hope we get more of these big fights in boxing, all weight classes. This is a great. What's going on in Saudi is really good for boxing, in my opinion.
Gotcha, most definitely. Take it easy.
All right, take care.